we are asking for matching funds. So the tribes have also agreed to pay the $60,000. So we'll have $120,000 to fund this program, which goes to equipment, obviously our instructors. So Captain Rooks is our full-time cadet instructor. He's a full-time captain with our organization. So this covers a little bit of his salary. And then obviously for any of the activities that we're doing with the kids, field trips, study materials, uniforms, that all goes into it. So the cost of the program is double of what your contribution is. So I do really appreciate it, and we have had a lot of success with our kids, and we're hoping to get them back here in our community working for Marysville Fire and for Tulalip Fire. So thank you.
Can you remind me how much of the school day kids are spending with you? Is it half and half kind of, or?
Basically, they are there from 0800 to about 10:15 in the morning, then on Wednesdays till 10:40 because it's their day. What I can't remember what they do on the Wednesdays. The advisory.
Yeah.
I graduated 35 years ago from high school, and we didn't have those classes then.
It's 2 periods.
Yeah.
The 2-period block.
Thank you.
We had one of the cadets last year was one of our student advisory members, and she spoke really highly of the program. So I just love that we're diversifying our CTE and thinking of these options because helping students find that career path in high school, I think is really important. So thanks for doing that good work, and also to Tulalip Tribes for matching the funds for this important program.
Yeah, thank you. Something I'd like to add, even if they don't become firefighters, maybe to give them some life skills on how to run a chainsaw or use a sawzall and that kind of stuff, right? There's more to it than just the fire service.
And it's fun.
Yeah. You get paid to break stuff.
All right, we appreciate you. Thank you very much. Is the board comfortable moving this to consent in 2 weeks' time? All right, we'd love to pause for a photo if you don't mind.
Sure.
Only if you sign the agreement.
Oh, man.
Recording stopped.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Recording in progress.
Thank you for that. It's been a while since we've had a photo op, so that was kind of fun. All right, I'm gonna turn it over to Dr. Carpenter. He has the next 2 items, and then we'll move forward from there.
I actually got 3 items since I'm filling in for, so we're looking at policy 2020, 3241 and 3245. So we'll take 2020 first. This is course design, selection, and adoption of instructional materials. This is an update to the policy required by OSPI to comply with the new state legislation in Senate Bill 5462. So just as a reminder, WASDA translates the legislation and OSPI direction into a recommended policy. And you kind of like think of it as a funnel, right? And we're the kind of the bottom of that funnel here. Changes are subtle and mostly clarifying language, includes some clarification around the term supplemental materials. And the goal is just to ensure that our alignment is consistent with legislation. Policy 3241 is student discipline. The core of this policy remains its commitment to student success and fostering a positive and equitable school culture and climate, prioritizes maximizing instruction and minimizing the use of exclusionary discipline, ensuring students remain in a supportive learning environment whenever possible. And this focuses on, there's an emphasis on restorative practices here that hasn't been present in years past. It also adds student-centered clarifying language. One of probably the most important key update includes expanding protected classes to include demographics specific to language around homelessness, immigration status, and neurodivergence. And the last policy is 3245, student use of personal mobile devices aims to direct improved student engagement and support mental health by minimizing personal mobile device use during the instructional day. The key add here is that it adds a necessary exception for students with IEPs or 504s to make sure that we're in compliance with federal and state law. Be happy to take questions.
And we can start with 2020.
On 2020, is this just basically a check the box kind of thing, or is there any practical effect to curriculum, adding and eliminating? Or is it
really-
just kind of getting compliance?
It's kind of, again, back to that funnel, right? There's recommended language, just to make sure that we're update with the legislation. The biggest thing in there is really the difference or the clarifying language around supplemental materials. And it just states that courses that are not expressly required by school or district are instead selected by the teacher's discretion.
So I had a couple of questions and just kind of thoughts.
Yeah.
When I'm looking at the red line versus, I think,
We're on 2020.
sorry, yes,
Okay.
we're on 2020. Because there's probably a lot around discipline that we could have a conversation about, but let's start with this one. I think one of the things that looks like it's been redlined out is the Marysville School District Strategic Directions Goals and 12th grade
Mhm.
graduate profile. I certainly understand, especially since we're kind of looking at our strategic plan, thinking it may be a little bit broad. I mean, we might want to narrow that. But I do kind of like the idea of having something in there that references Marysville School District goals. So if there's, and I'm open to wordsmithing, but just from the standpoint of that, it also reflects our values, not
Yeah.
just what.
And are you speaking specifically to post-secondary plans?
Well, I think more broadly to our goals.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we could put in post-secondary plans, but I'm looking at that first paragraph there.
Okay. I can check in with Melissa on that.
And then my next question is really something that's more of a, I wonder, and wondering if this, and I recognize that let's adopt this and make these changes
Yeah.
because in part, we want to make sure that we're compliant with state law. Let's get that done. But I wonder if it wouldn't make sense at some point to maybe revisit this policy. I just did a quick survey of some other districts. It looks like districts have kind of a lot of discretion or different ways that they approach this. And I wonder if this is serving our academic goals in the way we want it to. So I guess for now, let's make sure that we're doing what we need to do so that the state is happy, comfortable with that, but maybe it's something we want to look at a little bit more in depth.
My question is more about policy update and about procedures for how policies end up here. And I know that we used to have a policy committee, a community committee. And I just wonder about that practice and including stakeholders in policy updates and having that committee again. But if we do, I would not want this committee to be about, oh, we're checking a box. I would want it to be an approach that is meaningful and that it's there before it ends up here.
So I would echo your thoughts on that from this. Well, I think the policy changes that are coming before the board tonight are relatively meaty, as opposed to kind of just some things. Not that all policies are obviously important, but these can be pretty impactful. I would be interested in revising or revitalizing our policy committee and thinking about how we use it strategically. There may be some policies, and I'm really thinking about discipline and maybe the cell phone piece, potentially that we want to have maybe a deeper dive on, community input on. It might be helpful.
Yeah, when I saw the cell phone one, I was like, ooh, just because I know there's varying opinions about cell phones in schools. So I wouldn't mind a deeper dive, but I also want us to be in compliance with all of the state laws that we need to be in compliance with. And some of these have not been updated for a very long time.
Yeah, I think it's important that if there are updates we need to make to be in compliance with current laws and current technology, we need to make those changes. Even if we don't go deeper, make a deeper dive and look at, do we need to change the direction of this? I mean, the thing is, we control these policies, so we can take community input and we can make changes to those policies at any time if it's appropriate. But we also need to make sure, I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure that the policies are up to date and address current laws and the actual current technological environment. And before we close on 2020, I'm sorry, I don't want to cut you off if we have further discussion on that. Before we close on 2020, I want to say one of the things I like about this rewrite of the policy is it makes clear that both that the superintendent is responsible for evaluating, selecting all supplemental materials and has the authority to delegate that, because I really do think that that is an overall responsibility of the superintendent, but recognize that that needs to be delegated to, principals or directors or whatever, because you don't have the time to look at everything. But it really is your responsibility when teachers are adopting supplemental materials. If there's questions about that, it's really the superintendent's responsibility to resolve that.
Can I make a comment about that?
Yeah.
I wonder about a procedure for that too, and like rolling that out. Because of the nature of technology now and everything at fingertips, it seems like there's a lot of supplemental materials being used with the internet, and so just a comment that's going to take a really good SOP and rolling that out throughout the district.
Well, speaking from experience, I haven't been in that position. I think a lot of times supplemental materials are because you have to have it, that we don't have the curriculum that we should have in order to teach it. And so you've got to go and basically create your own curriculum. And so there's always a scramble. I mean, I think of all the years I taught health when there wasn't really a curriculum out there to use. And so I know it's kind of, I know that there needs to be a way to vet to make sure that the materials that are being used are appropriate and are within what, the scope of what you're trying to do. But in a lot of cases, it's like if I don't go and find it off the internet or find an article or find something to use in my classroom, then that lesson's not going to get taught. So there's some practical usage there too as well.
Thanks for the experience you bring to this conversation, because that was one of the things that I wondered about, especially as we've talked about some of the academic goals and gains that we hope for the district. And as we made that transition from sixth grade, from middle school to elementary school, and there's just maybe an area where it may be helpful for the board to have more information, potentially a work study, but that kind of magic balance of consistency across the district, and then flexibility in the classroom to let teachers do what they do best, right? So that.
Yeah, when a lot of cases, it's not like you're trying to just do your own thing. It's, I've got to do something. And so here's the best thing that I can find. So that's always a frustration, I know, with teachers.
And believe me, I'm not objecting in any way to teacher discretion. And I'm also not objecting that it would be good to have a procedure to follow in case there's any questions regarding teacher discretion. But I do feel it's important for the policy to indicate that overall, the superintendent and the superintendent's delegates have responsibility for examining, evaluating, and finally selecting those supplemental materials.
We do have a set of procedures. It is 28 pages long. And it is, separated into different components of instructional selection, depending on the type that it is. And so just information for the board. It was last updated in 2016, so this could be something that that we could take a look at. And this particular policy and procedure might be a good candidate for something like a policy committee to take a look at. I think it's a point of thoughtful conversation for the board, around you kind of, Mark, what you had talked about, being able to make adjustments in language and law as needed to make sure that we're in compliance. Just being thoughtful around how do we prioritize those that we seek community input on and being really strategic. Yeah. Are we comfortable moving 2020 to the consent agenda?
Yeah.
Okay. Director Michael had asked some questions about that, and I will forward my responses to the full board afterwards. And then questions on 3241, 3245.
With both these policies, I think it's important that what we have this policy is also something that's workable at the school level. So just to refresh us, are we as a district kind of going with the PBIS model for student behavior? Is that kind of what we're following? Or do we have a set behavior plan for our district?
We don't have a program, a brand name that is used across all systems, or excuse me, all schools, but it's very much an PBIS type MTSS intervention protocol.
So is there a system in place that kind of proactively, I wrote this down, proactively implements discipline practices that support students in meeting their behavioral expectations, especially like, that there was we used to call tier 2 kids?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. It's like Dr. Rumbaugh spoke to the tier 1, which is just really instruction for all, right? And then tier 2 in terms of MTSS, we do have a discipline matrix that we work on that helps to provide some consistency and recommendations across our system, so that our building leaders are able to reference that when they're applying consequences, knowing that the intent of any behavior intervention is to prevent the behavior from happening again and not to be overly punitive.
So do we have systems in place when let's say a kid or a student does have a real, behavior breakdown? Because it's the thing that you hear is that, or I guess maybe it's a misnomer, but people seem to think that these 1 or 2 kids in the class get the attention while the other 28 suffer, and so it says, well, yes, we know that all kids have a right to an education, all kids should be included, but when is that line crossed when, okay, the other 28 kids in my class can't learn because of the behavior of this one student? And I know we don't want to remove kids from class. That's the last the move you want to make last, but do we have, what we used to call turnaround rooms or places for kids to kind of calm down? It's not like, kicking them out for the day, but just a place to kind of go ahead and regroup. Is that a common practice?
I would say yes, we have systems in place, and I would say that those systems also vary by building and by grade level. But yes, there are systems in place. In terms of like a consistent system across the board, I think there's room for growth there. Yeah.
This one's really tough. Like one of the most, I don't know, one of the toughest things I ever heard from a kid was they said, I said, Mr. H, there's no reward for being a good kid, and there's
Yeah.
really no consequence if you're being bad. In fact, if I'm bad, all I have to do is be good for a couple of days and I get all this rewards and stuff. I get all this stuff, and well, I'm good every day and I don't really get anything. And so I know that there's maybe it's not the system, but maybe a lot of misuse of that system where it's oh, you've shown improvement, but you know, and we kind of forget about the kids who are doing what they're supposed to be doing every day. And so, I mean, is there a way to address that?
I would encourage you to go stop by Cedar Crest Middle. They're doing a really good job of incentivizing positive behavior for all students,
Good.
as opposed to just rewarding, kind of like you're saying, that incremental
Yeah.
turnaround.
Yeah, we used to, utilize pretty frequently token economies, which I think is kind of what you're referring to,
Yeah.
and that is part of PBIS. And usually those token economies are used as an initial construct to put in place a system, and then those fade away. And I think that's kind of what you're talking about. Do those fade, and how do we reward the desired behavior?
Yeah, because I kind of found it, my experience, I kind of found it to be almost counterproductive. It's like, it just, the idea, the heart was in the right place, but the effects we got out of it kind of a lot of times seem to backfire with that sort of token economy type thing, especially when you say, oh, you're going to get an assembly or a pizza party or something like that for doing this. And then if you earn so many points or whatever, and then at the end you have this softy teacher say, oh, Mark he tried, I'll let him go anyway. And then it's just, it's not a good thing. So I have feelings about that kind of manipulation, I guess.
Yeah, and I think kind of thinking about the board's role in setting those guardrails with regard to the policy, and then, the teaching and learning team works with principals on annual discipline reviews. And we're fortunate in Marysville that we have really strong building instructional leadership teams that all help contribute to the development of that, which is different than us saying, you do this one thing and you do it this way. So we're very fortunate.
I would just like to say, echoing on what Craig said earlier, I don't have any personal experience in the classroom, but I spent 24 years directly listening every day to someone who did have experience with discipline in the classroom. And I think, discipline and how we implement it is a really sensitive topic, and probably one, what our procedures are and the actual effect of implementing those procedures, particularly in the elementary schools, is something we could spend an awful lot of time on. I'm not sure it directly affects this policy, because I think this policy looks good, but it is something I think we need to consider as part of the board, and something we need to look at. I did have one other question though, which is I'm curious what the difference is between discretionary and non-discretionary discipline. Because that's I guess I didn't know there was non-discretionary discipline, and I'd like to know what that is.
Would you like to answer that, or you want me to go
Go
there?
ahead.
There are certain offenses that the state has said that schools do not have the discretion on how they discipline. Weapons being one, distribution of narcotics being a second, and then firearms. We do not have discretion in those areas. We follow state law, which is typically exclusion.
Okay, so specifically, the school is responsible for determining that the fact of whether this student was in possession of the firearms or the drugs or whatever, and then once having determined that fact, the penalty is non-discretionary.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, and outlined in law.
Okay.
Mhm. Yep. And in the the narcotic drug abuse, it is distribution, which is a distinction from possession. So just
Okay,
so you
okay.
know, yeah.
And those are all outlined in our discipline matrix.
Okay.
Yep.
So I had a couple of questions. Are we looking at this policy as I know OSPI issued some guidance, I think maybe back in June, or
Mhm.
not sure what the date was. Is there a deadline for us to kind of update our policies to be in compliance? Or were they recommendations?
It's always as soon as possible.
Okay.
And typically we get these updates from OSPI or WASDA in August. And so this year we were fortunate to get it a little bit early. Crosby did some work in aligning our discipline matrix for schools before getting this to you. So we kind of had all those pieces in alignment.
Okay.
And this should really be something that we're looking at annually because we know the legislature changes the law on an annual basis every summer.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I appreciate the work on that. I mean, it has been, I feel like, a hot button issue.
Oh, yeah.
Not just
yeah.
in our
I brought you
district,
three
but
big ones tonight.
yeah, you did. You did. They are meaty. But I know it's been a hot button issue,
Yeah.
just not in our district, but really across the
Yeah.
state and across the country. And it looks like the proposed policy you have kind of combines kind of some of the pieces from WASDA that
Correct.
is updated to reflect current change in law. And then some existing things that Marysville had
Tries
that
to-
might be a little bit
Yeah.
more unique to our
Yeah.
situation.
Yep.
Okay. And then I guess I would just echo comments about, I feel like this is an area where potentially we might want to go ahead and update our policy so that we are kind of up to date and up to speed, but spending a little bit of time in some format, whatever that format is, in part because it just is an area where, either you hear from staff about concerns and frustrations about behaviors or from parents in the same vein. So,
I agree with that. And I wonder about, I guess I have a question regarding, should we have aligned practices across our schools? Like in regards to how our certain schools are disciplining versus, what, like you said, check out Cedar Crest.
Yeah.
So one example I would reference would be like one of our schools has like a probationary status and has a no contact order, all things that I really align with, like the judicial system. And I feel like it's very, like, those are not words that we should be using with our, like, different terms, and it should be aligned across all of our schools, how we're entering into agreements like that for students and what triggers that. But I am also open to learning what are like best practices in districts too. And then I also am curious about the process that is taking place for ensuring, so this particular one, the district will ensure that school principals confer with certificated building employees at least annually to develop or review building discipline standards and review the fidelity of implementation of these standards. At each school district, principals and certificated staff will develop written school procedures for administering discipline at their school with the participation of other school personnel, students, parents, families, and the community. There's a lot right there. And so I just want to make sure that when we adopt policies, that we're all also implementing procedures to ensure that we're being inclusive of, this one's particularly says school, personnel, students, parents, families, and community. So that's just a thought I have, but also wondering, implementing culturally responsive discipline that provides every student the opportunity to achieve personal and academic success. What does that look like, and who's determining that for who people's culture?
I have a thought. Do you want to add on after
No.
so kind of going to your first question around common procedures across all buildings. The procedures for discipline are outlined in rules and regulations and law. So those are expected to be consistent across buildings. What is variable is the programming model. So I might be really trained well in PBIS, and, you know, another school might use Character Strong-esque, you know, type programs, and then other principals might bring other programs in. And so it is that where the variation exists, but the procedures and the policies should be consistent across all. And I hear what you're saying around like the words that we use so that we don't sound like we are a judicial system or a penitentiary. Yeah, absolutely. And then your second question about how do we include all? So we do provide, and we are having an annual training for our building administrators who then, you know, go and do that same work with their building instructional leadership teams on an annual basis about discipline. I think where we have a gap is the part that you read, that the development of that is done with students, families, and community. And sometimes the nuances in the law are not significant enough, like, what are those little stars that is in that kids used to throw? Throwing stars. You know, that used to be up in the non-discretionary, and it has come out since. And so those kinds of things, you know, we may not go to students, families, and community, but I think generally speaking, we don't yet have a mechanism for that. And that is, I think, is a gap for us that we need to address. And I think that's separate from, you know, a community group that helps us look at specific policies. I think it needs to be kind of happen in both places.
One other spot in this that talked about the data and helping determine policy. And so I don't know where it's at in here right now, but just, yeah.
We also report to the state on an annual basis our discipline data that is disaggregated. And that goes through a process of audit at the state level, which districts can receive findings, audit findings, not the kind of audit that we're thinking of in the financial audit. But that is also a process that helps districts then utilize that data that summer. Because we report it to the state, we have it, and it helps us to take a look at how do we do our training again in the fall. And sitting with individual principals to take a look at their disaggregated data is also part of our routines and practices. Anything else on 3241? We could talk all evening about. Yeah.
Well, I want to make one more plug for something that I feel like would just benefit us so much is having a policy system like what I've shared before, like NAVEX, Policy Tech, where we could, if our policies get updated, then as a district, we can say, check, 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 and we want to assign this to all these people. And then our policies, they get assigned it. But it also creates opportunity for timelines, like when you need to review this policy. Because now I think we just hold them all in like a shared drive. We don't have an actual system that is meant to store. It tracks all the changes that you make. So that's just something I really feel like would benefit everybody. It'd make your job much easier too. And ours is policy oversight.
Okay, thank you. Are we comfortable moving this for more discussion in 2 weeks?
Hearing more discussion, yes, thank you.
And then we still have 3245 personal mobile devices, or mobile if I was on another continent.
Yeah.
So I have to admit, I was a little bit excited to see this come up for discussion. Certainly been following the other districts that have taken kind of a stronger stance maybe against mobile devices on campus.
Mhm.
And this precedes you, but at one point our district joined a class action lawsuit, I think against social media companies, maybe a year and a half ago. It's probably still out there and, someday it will be settled. This is an area where I would love to have a conversation with our communities. It looks like the proposed policy is pretty consistent with what we're doing already.
And it already, yes, exactly. Yeah,
yeah.
it's very subtle, right? It's more of adding protections for students who have an IEP or 504 to make sure that they can access a device if it's written into their learning plan.
Right. And it looks like it's really consistent with what OSPI, they had issued some guidance and
Yeah.
looks really consistent already.
Yeah.
So it sounds like we're kind of up to speed in terms of where our policy is at. And then I just think about capacity. We've got a lot on our plate as a district. If there is interest in the conversation, it's a conversation certainly that I think would be worth having. I just am not sure if it's now or later.
Right. And this, I believe, really comes down to enforcement, right? This is one of those things that has to be enforced consistently. Like if you're just talking about one building and you only have 60% efficacy, it's not going to work. So it really means getting buy-in from all staff.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And what I think we've seen regionally is, OSPI gave the district a pretty nice timeline for implementation and adoption of a policy. Those districts that adopted a policy last year or the year prior did what we did year one and made notable changes year two. And again, some of that is to address high variability in implementation across buildings and found and discovered ways to make the policy and procedure more meaningful. And it would not surprise me if we brought this back to you a year from now after kind of walking this first year of implementation and accountability.
Yeah, I really think this is a case, as I said earlier, where we need to implement this policy to get it up to date and then address any implementation issues we encounter, as well as if we receive any significant community input.
And it wouldn't surprise me if WASDA continues to make suggestions because they've got that broad view across the state and it's really helpful. If we're struggling with this thread of implementation, we can see what other districts have done is at least a starting point.
But also I think it's not this is not necessarily a policy that needs to be uniform among all school districts in this state.
Yeah.
Seattle and Tacoma and Bellevue are probably going to have very different situations than Marysville.
Mhm. Yeah. Anything else on 3245?
Just a quick clarification. It says that, personal mobile devices will be turned on and operate only before and after the regular school day and during the student's lunch break. What's that? So, that throws in I'm thinking of high school and passing time. I mean, I don't want to have to turn our teachers into the cell phone police, and say, oh, put your cell phone away, that sort of thing. Is there, so I mean, it's like, okay, there's a crack, and so we can do that, buses, on the way to school or coming home from school, that sort of thing. So there's all these, but we were talking about behavior. I never had rules for my classes because I could think of 100 rules and you're going to think of the one thing I didn't think of. So it's more like expectations. So, I'm just thinking if there's a way that we can phrase this so that we take kind of the practical world into account too, that the kids are living in. That's just a wondering.
Yeah, I agree.
I was going to say, again, it comes back to that magic balance, right? Where it becomes not a teacher management issue, like one more thing to have to manage, but you're finding ways to help create a conducive environment, right?
Well, yeah, and something we can have buy-in too. I mean, a lot of it is, I want to be the cool teacher. So, okay, you did a good job. You can have your phone the last 5 minutes of class, and it kind of undercuts everything that you're doing as a policy. And so there's got to be consistency. And so as soon as you have one person, then it's like, well, so-and-so lets us, and you get into that slippery slope of not being consistent. So I just want to make sure that we have something as a policy that's actually workable for people, that's clear and doesn't create more work or make it, make kids, I think in the past we've forced our students have kind of, it's taught them to be kind of sneaky. I'm going to see if I can sneak my phone out and see if I can go to the bathroom and sneak it, and I don't want to get to the point where, we're patting kids down. I mean, I don't think prohibition really ever works, but, and responsible usage is where we should be going with, but, we've got to kind of understand that the real world that we're having to, we can make these decisions and make these policies, but then they have to be implemented. And that's, I think, a lot of times where we fall short.
Sure.
So just want to keep a open eye to that.
And I would say a layer to that with this policy in particular does include how parents feel about students not having, or parents not having access to their student all day. Just is a layer that is part of the complexity.
That's a really good point. There's been several times where it's off away. What are you doing? Oh, it's my mom. It's like, oh, okay. So, so it's that sort of thing too.
Mhm. Yeah.
I feel like this could be a pretty robust conversation with our community around what our community values. I hear your suggestion of maybe coming back in a year and revisiting. It also gives us an opportunity to look at some of the best practices around the state, and the experiences that some of the other districts have had. I feel like I read an article recently about Spokane implementing a little bit broader of a policy than this and having some real success. So you should say that in the microphone.
Yeah, and I think I recall seeing just in the last week or so that the New York statewide has banned cell phones in all their schools. I'm just kind of interested in how that's going to work out for them. I don't know.
Again, I think it's important that we have a policy and that we look at what the issues are with implementation and community input, and then we perhaps make revisions to the policy.
All right. That said, are we comfortable moving it forward in 2 weeks? With consent?
Yep.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Good evening. Last month, you approved, we read and approved the rollover of the SEIU 10 and 12-month collective bargaining agreement. And because it has been approved by the board, we were able to update the salary schedules that were associated with those approvals. So tonight I'm presenting those for your information, and hopefully will be moved to the consent agenda in a couple weeks for approval at that point. So again, these are the IPD updates to the SEIU 10 and 12 collective bargaining agreements, which have already been approved and also were budgeted for that the FOC is aware of within the budget as well.
All right. Any questions from the board on these schedules? Right. And assuming we're good for consent in 2 weeks?
Yes.
Thank you.
Hi, this informational report is proposing to enter into an interlocal agreement with Lakewood School District for Marysville to provide 0.4 of physical therapist time to support their students. We, in the previous years, have had 3.0 and have need for a 3.0 FTE of physical therapist. This year, as everything's shaken out, we only have need for 2.6. And we ended up reaching out to local districts to see if there was any need and found Lakewood needed this. So this will give us the opportunity to reduce our costs for this year. So.
And not an uncommon practice between
Correct.
neighboring districts to kind of do that resource sharing. Questions?
Questions?
It's just nice to see coming into us, because most of the ones we've seen have been us going out to other districts. So it's nice to see something coming into us for once. So
Yes.
And just to be clear that I fully understand what you just said, last year we had a requirement for 3.0, so we didn't need this agreement. We had three
We had need for up to 3.0.
physical therapists, and this year we still have three physical therapists, but we only need 2.6. So we have resolved that difference by having a interlocal agreement with Lakewood.
You said it better than I did. Thank you.
I just appreciate the innovation and reaching out to our neighboring districts. It keeps that person with a full-time job, not a 0.6 or a 0.7 job, which is great. And then fills a need probably that Lakewood has, that, you know, that way they don't have to hire a full-time person either. I just think it's a great partnership.
Thank you.
All right, and can we move this to consent?
Yes.
All right, and we have some informational reports for you from Mike Sullivan.
Yes, enrollment is the report I had. Now I tried to put in the informational report information about the enrollment. That way, kind of more of a narrative on what's going on. And of course, pointing out the highlights. This is September enrollment. And I've got a couple different reports in there, but September enrollment, and in September we don't get to count doors and left those out of the reports, right? And ultimately we're up about 150 FTE students. Now I already know October didn't come in as high as I think I'd like it to be, but we're still going to be up for the year. Typically there's an upswing, and there is still an upswing in the enrollment in October, just maybe not as much as I would have liked to have seen. So I may end very close to where we started instead of up by about 10, which is what I was thinking before. So we'll have to watch the enrollment carefully as we go along. Anyways, so I created new reports. The first report is by grade. So you can see the actual enrollment numbers by grade all the way down. And I've included Running Start and Open Doors, but I didn't put in our budgetary numbers at this time because it would kind of throw your comparison off. The important reason why I also keep those separate is that enrollment comes in and out of our district, right? In other words, we receive that money for those kids, and then we turn around and we pay it to the community college, for example, or we pay it to the ESD. So if it's up, we're paying them more. If it's down, we're paying them less, right? So it's kind of more of a wash on those. We do get to keep a small indirect on those. So that's why the in-person enrollment's what really drives our staffing, right? And everything else we're doing in the district. My second report with the numbers in them and counts is by building. That way you can see not only what did we total budget in the district by grade, but then you can also see what did we budget, how is it coming out per school, where are we at there. So I think I pointed out that our K3 we're up 100. So really that means 412, I'm up 50, right? And I'm down quite a bit in 4-6 from our projections. So that's the things we may want to watch. Then I also created flow charts on these, comparing the last 2 years. So that way you can look at the in-person enrollment trends on the flow chart for this year and the last 2 years. And you'll note that the in-person ones from the budget dropped down to September because our enrollment came in less than we anticipated for the year. But this year it's going up. And then in my other enrollment report, it's the total enrollment. You'll see that one drops down simply because we don't have October counted in the enrollment reports.
And Mike, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Would it
Questions?
be possible to project this?
I was thinking that too, but I didn't know if that was something we did.
Like we're working on it. Thank you.
Okay, great.
There we go. So this is the trend, the third link. Yeah, there. Thank you.
Yes, so there's the trend. That's our in-person. So our in-person enrollment, you can compare the last 2 years, 23, 24, 24, 25. The budget's that first starting point, and September is where we actually ended up. So you can see for the last couple of years, we budgeted higher than what actually came in enrollment. Yet this year, you can see where the budget is. We actually went up from there. So that's the big deal. From there, you're going to follow probably that pattern that you see there for the prior years all the way across. So it's going to go up again in October, slowly go down a little bit through June, and our annual average will be right in the middle there someplace. Notice it's a little higher than or about the same as September in 24-25. That's what we'll look for this year, is that we hit that September. I'm hoping that by the end of the year, that annual average, goes up in October, a little bit down, and we end up very close to where we are in September here. So the next one down, you can see that's total enrollment, and it'll always kind of go down. But notice it didn't go down as much this year as it has in the prior couple of years, because it's going to shoot back up in October when we have our enrollment for the Running Start and Open Doors programs included in the numbers.
Thank you for that. I appreciate you highlighting our budgetary practices this year for budgeting for projected enrollment. And while, this top trend line does require us to hire staff, it is better to hire staff in the fall than to be overstaffed, particularly in our financial situation. So I think this is strong evidence that you're guiding us in the right direction. So thank you for that.
Well, and I'll give some credit to the person that did the enrollment projections, Dan Pullman, who was here before me. I mean, I went through and reviewed the numbers too, and his were, a little bit more where, like, I think I'm off more in certain grades and stuff. But he told me it's all in there. It should be good. We should be up from it. And sure enough, I appreciate the work he did in the short period of time that he did it in.
And just to understand the final impact of all of this, basically, we will be, because we have more enrollment, we will be getting more money. However, we need to hire more teachers. So that basically is going to wind up with a net zero impact on what we think the end of year budget surplus will be, or
Yes.
funding surplus will be.
Yes.
So I see the good news that we are up in our K-3 grades. And I seem to remember, Superintendent Rumbaugh, that you were saying that we really rely on those birth rates and the littles really
Yes,
just
the 5-year-old.
start us on a trend. So great to see that we have that K-3 number. And then I also just want to note that, one of the positives about keeping our K-3 class size, that we're really working to keep those class sizes low for those younger grades. There's a lot of things that we've had to pare back on and maybe do without, but I really appreciate the commitment there.
Yeah, that really is trying to maximize the state funding in that K-3 ratio.
It's also really good for kids.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and you may recall that we were not in that situation last fall, had not leveraged that additional K-3 funding, which goes directly to additional teachers. So we did do that this year. So it's nice to see that we can keep class sizes small for our youngest learners.
And while it's important to note that we're up from budget, we're still down from last year by 120. Okay, so enrollment is continuing to decline. And as we look to 26, 27, I can almost guarantee you I'm going to project another enrollment decline going into that year.
So we can expect kind of that continued downward trend in our enrollment, which is, I think, not a whole lot different from what a lot of districts are experiencing.
Correct. And I think our if I go back and look, I think, can you pull up the other, what do you call it? The one that has it by grade. It's right above the one you clicked. Yes, that one right there. So you can see in kindergarten are down 28.5 from projections. So that kindergarten, to me, that enrollment there says, yes, birth rates are down. We're going to probably continue to have fewer kindergartners coming in. So in the first grade, that was surprisingly up from where they were in kindergarten last year.
Any other questions for Mike Sullivan?
Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. And we are actually going to excuse Mr. Sullivan for the evening so that he can head home. We appreciate you making it on a sick day. All right, and that concludes the superintendent's report. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was quite a report. We are moving to our consent agenda. And the board gives 2 opportunities to make public comment. This is the opportunity to speak on items on the consent agenda, and we will have general public comment at the end of our agenda tonight. And I'm looking for anyone with public comments on the consent agenda. And I'm seeing none. And then board before you is a consent agenda. And do any board members wish to pull any consent agenda items for additional discussion this evening? I am seeing none. All right. So is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion passes. And now is our second opportunity for public comment. And I believe we did not have anyone sign in this evening. Okay. So we are going to move into topics scheduled for board discussion. And we have 4 items this evening. Board goals, which I'd like to move up to the top, and superintendent evaluation. And these are 2 items that we previously have had board discussion on. And my hope this evening is that we can just get these buttoned up, make sure everyone's on the same page with respect to, excuse me, both, and get board goals published to the website, and then just make sure that we're all buttoned up on our superintendent evaluation process. So board goals. So we have had both a board retreat where we had the opportunity to look at how other districts and what other districts have done with respect to board goals, have some discussion. And then we've had discussion here. I think we are on maybe version 4 of our board goals. We've added some metrics, so we have some specifics around them, and we wanted to create some focus this year. And so we've got 4 areas: organizational effectiveness, safety and belonging, effective learning environment, community engagement, and partnership. And we also have some board progress checks that are on the calendar so that we know that the superintendent and her team are going to come back and report to the board about these areas December 2nd, February 2nd, and July 20th. So we've got both metrics and then reporting dates. And then I just wanted to check in one last time and see if there's any additional changes before we ask the superintendent to go ahead and post these. Any comments?
I have a comment that I am super happy that we were able to do this process and complete something as a board. And it just feels really good because it felt like we were in a lot of chaos for so long that I'm just very happy about this progress.
Yeah, I agree. It was a good process to get through. It's clean, it's clear, it's not overly wordy, it's really easy to understand. It's been real easy during the past few weeks when we've been interviewed and stuff about this sort of thing to be able to refer to this so that we're all kind of showing unity, that we're all thinking the same way and that we have a plan in place. So it's been very positive. Yeah.
Anything else? Okay. Agreed. I really appreciate both the time Dr. Rumbaugh and your team committed to helping us with these, and then the input of and the work of the board. It is great to get to a spot where we're being able to be proactive. It feels like we are rowing in the same direction, which is great. And I think, Dr. Rumba, if you will, I think we are ready to put that on our website and wherever else we need to put it. So thank you so much.
Right. I know the person that will do that for us.
Thank you. Okay, second item that we have also previously discussed, and again, same process where the board had the opportunity to have a retreat to learn more about WASDA standards around superintendent evaluation, look at models from other districts, have some discussion here. And I think our last conversation was on September 3rd. We're intending to use the 8 WASDA standards for superintendent evaluation. They're posted on WASDA's website if anybody either listening to us online or out in the audience wants to go and check those out. Again, this is an area where we're adopting best practices, not necessarily reinventing the wheel. Again, following that same theme of wanting to create some focus, I think the areas that were identified were Standard 1, Standard 7, and Standard 8. So Standard 1 is mission, vision, and core values. Standard 7, operations management, and Standard 8, collaboration with the board, developing positive working relationships and procedures, and that focus on promoting each student's academic success and well-being. And so we also discussed having quarterly updates from the superintendent. Those are scheduled for November 3rd, February 2nd, May 4th, and June 15th, with executive sessions tied to each. So there will be part of this process where the superintendent will report as part of the superintendent report out to the community. And just like we do with any other employee, those evaluation pieces are conducted in an executive session. So we do have executive sessions typically 2 weeks after the report. We may want to look at adjusting 1 or 2 of those depending on timeline. But it's our hope that this process creates an ongoing constructive conversation about the direction of the district. And we get opportunities to hear about the progress that we're making. And then if needed, make some course adjustments as needs arise during the school year. But again, hoping that it creates kind of this feedback loop of a constructive conversation for all of us. And then I'm going to open it up to the board for conversation or edits as needed.
Yeah, well, I have a couple comments. First off, I think the choice of these 3 specific items to focus on is a really good one. I think 8, while I agree with all of the 8 standards, I think these are the 3 that are most critical for the success of our district. And I have looked at the Washington state-based superintendent framework standards that came from WASDA. And while I generally agree with them, I also have my own feelings on what is important to me in those elements. And looking at the WASDA standards and the themes that they present for each of the standards, I do think, while I agree with the ones for Standard 1, I do think a key element of holding the board and staff mutually accountable for striving towards the vision, a key element of that to me is that the senior district management and the school management, the principals, them being aligned with this are probably with the vision is probably the most critical aspect, because the administrative staff is going to take their cue from the district leadership, and the schools are going to take their cue from the principals. And so if those folks aren't aligned, then we're not going to get alignment. That's just my comment on that. With regard to operations and management, I think the standard itself describes what the 2 most critical elements are. Managing school operations and resources, we have to meet our budget, and we have to use those resources effectively. And if we're not doing those 2 things, then then we as a district are going to fail. And then obviously the end measurement of success in that area is student success and well-being. And then it's hard not to say I like collaboration with the board. I really think, although I haven't agreed immediately with everything our interim superintendent has done, I've found that, I found a great deal of responsiveness with respect and consideration of the board. And so I would really like that to continue. So as we progress through the year, and I think that will that will give us a better opportunity to achieve success.
Thank you. And I may have been remiss in my kind of opening comments. I just want to be clear. All 8 standards will be done throughout the year. Those are all going to happen. We just wanted to create a little bit of focus with these 1, 7, and 8. And Craig?
Pardon if I misstated that, but okay.
Yeah, I mean, both said what I was going to kind of say that, we are, just because we don't have all 8 listed doesn't mean that the 5 we didn't list are not important or being done. But I think it's really important to say, okay, what are 3 things we really want to put our main focus on this year, rather than trying to do everything and do it kind of so. Let's pick out 3 things and really focus on those. So it's I'm certainly happy with this and the process that we went through to get to these. So.
Well, I also agree with the 3 standards that we have selected here. And I'm also in agreement with the procedure. And again, being proactive, being able to create some best practices. Also as a board, it feels good to be able to move us forward.
Agreed. Thank you very much. I appreciate, again, the work of everyone involved, pulling this process together. And, it feels like doing it for the first time is always the hardest. It just gets easier once you kind of implement best practices. So looking forward to that. And again, appreciate the clarity. I know we've had one discussion already, but wanted to just revisit it and make sure we're all on the same page. Okay, next topic for this evening is the job description for the superintendent. And it is available on the district website. It was last revised in 2005. And so we thought it was time to revisit it again. There's a broad skill set that's required, and I think what's there may not reflect the current needs of our district. And so I wanted the board to have a conversation this evening about timeline for updating the job description, process, if there's a board member or 2 who would like to lead the process, opportunities for public feedback or input, specifically around skill sets, priorities for the district, and then potentially looking, WASDA has a model policy. We can also look to other school districts as well, but wanted to open the conversation about updating that job description.
Yes, it's been a very long time since this job description has been updated. I would like us to, it's actually been like 25 years, I think, or 20 years. But I would like us to ensure that we're committing to getting this done in a really timely manner, and also looking at community input and how we update this. I think a survey could be really good for gathering information from our stakeholders about leadership qualities and what's most important for our stakeholders as we consider updating a job description for MSD and looking at I think other districts standardize. I like the idea of having somebody take the lead, a couple of directors take the lead in doing this update, but then perhaps using some information that we obtain from stakeholders about what they want to see in district leadership and pulling together a work study. And so I would like to see this in a good timeline too.
Yeah, after looking at our existing policy and basically the WASDA model policy, I like the WASDA model a lot more. I like that it's got functions and responsibilities. It's got 6 main areas broken down. They're defined, and each area that's defined has examples. So it's really clear as to what you're looking at. Maybe the knowledge and skills, abilities that, I think because WASDA was like from 2014. So maybe some of those could be cleaned up a little bit. Some of the stuff I'm not too sure about, but that might be something we could look at there. I'm questioning whether we need a section on physical requirements or those sort of things. It's I don't know if that's just kind of a standard boilerplate thing you have. I was looking at ours. I just want to share this because it just cracked me up. It says the employee, as far as work environment, the employee is required to have precise control of fingers and hand movements, experience constant interruptions and inflexible deadlines. The employee is required to deal with distraught and or angry persons and is exposed to infectious diseases carried by children. It's like, how would you ever have anybody apply for that? It sounds like, oh my gosh. So I don't know if we need to make that part of our job description or
It's
not,
like-
but it just kind of thought some of the stuff that was
It's
in
like
Mary's one.
every medication commercial you ever see.
And yes, there may be some side effects to this job that we're so for those sort of things. And then I do like though in our current policy that there is a section there that addresses evaluation. It's something that we had talked about, being evaluating on a quarterly basis. So to have that in there as part of that job description, I think is something that we might want to look adding to that WASDA model. But again, I think I like the clarity of the example from WASDA as opposed to kind of the jumbled description we had for Marysville's current policy.
You're saying policy, but you mean job description, right?
Yeah, I misspoke. Job description, not it isn't a policy, it's a description, yeah.
Want to clarify.
I think the font alone says a lot. I know that you can't see it out here, but it looks like it was typewritten on a typewriter.
I also like the concept of starting with the WASDA model as a structure and looking for perhaps I'm sure there are a few good things in our job description that we want to carry forward, and perhaps the work environment is not one of them. But I like we're starting with that, and then looking at some key policies from some of particularly from some of our neighbor districts. Might be a good approach, but and also, well, I say getting community input on this is extremely important. But ultimately, we have to recognize as a board the decision on what the job description says is going to we are going to have to make the decision on the job description, and so we're going to have to look at both what we think is important and what the community thinks is important, and find a way to incorporate that into a single document.
So do you support a survey for
Um,
that input?
I do, but I
Um,
wouldn't want to be responsible for putting it together. I mean, I think that's really going to be a difficult job. Is what concerns me.
So if I'm thinking about a survey, I hear what you're saying about a difficult job. I guess you're right. I wouldn't want to have it be, I would want, I don't
So Dr. Rumbaugh, is that something that district staff could help us design something that, um, so I really like the idea of getting community input and development of some community priorities around skill sets. I also want to be very mindful about how we go about this. And I think there's probably some best practices out there that we can kind of cut and paste. Is that something that district staff can kind of help us develop?
Yes, absolutely. And we have a human resources department that essentially the board has hired that manages all of our job descriptions. And that would be, I think, a smart thing to let our HR department know the wishes of the board, including potentially a survey. I think that HR could also help in organizing that survey data and making recommendations to the board for review.
And I think two things are really important from the survey. What we're looking at are the qualities and capabilities that we're looking to identify the qualities and capabilities that the community thinks are important. What should we be looking for in a superintendent? But also, I think that's going to be structured and it's going to offer people some options, clearly. But also, we have to clearly have a lot of opportunity for people to comment. And it's going to be important when the surveys come back, we as a board have an opportunity to review those comments, not summaries of those comments, because we need to know, we need to have the opportunity to see what the community is saying. And sometimes the information, when you conduct a survey, the information in the comments is much more important than the options that people select in the survey.
Heard. I appreciate that input. Okay. So working with your team, maybe we can develop a survey with the opportunity for comments. I'm thinking about timeline. I think this is something pretty darn high on my priority list. I would love to see us be able to move through this with a draft, maybe ready for folks to look at the beginning of November. So if we could have potentially do a survey, the board gets the opportunity to maybe look at something later this week. It's out for 2 weeks. Potentially, we could review some preliminary data at our next meeting. And there might be an opportunity, depending on kind of how the board feels, to have a work study around this. I heard some interest from Eliza about having either two of us or one of us sort of take the lead. And I'm curious if there's anybody who wants to volunteer. And then wondering how folks feel about either that team of two offering obviously working with HR so that our our drafts are consistent and compliant. So either that team could come back with a proposal, or we could do a work study and have an opportunity to have additional discussion around that. What would folks like to do?
I volunteer, Craig.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said. Oh,
I'll be happy to participate, but I need somebody else to do some of the heavy lifting with me.
Okay. Anyone interested? I mean, I'm happy to all
Anybody have-
participate. Craig, you and I can tag team.
Experience with
It's-
contracts or?
okay. And who's written a few job descriptions too, you mean?
Anybody written a job description? Anybody?
Yeah, I've written a few. Okay, I would volunteer to work with Craig.
Okay, thank you. So Director Thomas and Director Harris, we are going to task you two with taking the lead. And then I think if we can have a survey developed relatively quickly so that we can get some feedback from the community, hopefully at least look at some of that preliminary data at our next meeting. And then I guess we'll take our cues from you on October 20th, whether we need to have a work study and a more broad discussion, or if you feel like you'll be ready to bring a draft job description to the board in early November. Does that sound like a fair way to proceed?
Sure.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Okay, and then our last board discussion item for the evening is regarding our superintendent contract. And many of you might know that Dr. Rumba initially joined our district as a consultant to help us as we were moving through the process of school closures. And then March 17th, the district was lucky enough to be able to hire her as interim as Dr. Burgess moved back into retirement. And we hired Dr. Rumba to help see us through the last academic year and then to shepherd us through this school year. And as part of that interim contract, one of the provisions was that the board would let her know by December 1st what our intentions were on a long-term basis. And I think about this just the same way. By May 15th, we need to let our teaching staff know what our intentions are so they have the opportunity to go and do what they need to do. Same kind of thing. So our last leadership changes happened relatively quickly, just given the circumstances of the district. So I wanted this topic to at least be opened up for discussion and on the agenda so folks were aware. And I do think our work around both the revised job description and the superintendent evaluation are going to be very helpful as we kind of move forward, and will help inform that decision. So I'm going to open it up for board comments and discussion at this point in time.
I wanted to take a little bit of time as we talk about Dr. Rumba's interim role here to, I guess, talk more about her accomplishments in this field. I think that's something that is important for us to acknowledge, and this is just a small little list of her accomplishments, but I want to run through this because I feel like maybe it's an opportunity that we missed when we did bring her on in the interim superintendency. So I'm going to share some of that stuff. She has a very extensive resume that includes over 20 years in K-12 education with 1 decade in various leadership roles. In those leadership roles, that includes a position with Auburn School District as a science teacher and dean of students, in Kent School District, an assistant principal at Kentwood High School. This is a very large district that served over 26,000 students with over 42 schools. That's very impressive. Highline Public Schools, where Dr. Rumbaugh served as principal of Pacific Middle School before becoming the executive director of human resources at Highline Public Schools. And within this role, some of the focused work that she did was streamlining and automating HR transactions, designing a comprehensive strategy, and analyzing HR data to support informed decision-making. Led positive and collaborative labor relations, including successful collective bargaining negotiations. And I wanted to really highlight some of those because these are absolutely systems that we need to continue to make sustainable and best practices in Marysville. And second, in Highline Public Schools, Dr. Rumbaugh was the area superintendent / executive director in instructional leadership. I want to really note that this school district also spans across 5 municipalities and borders Muckleshoot, Suquamish, and Puyallup tribes. During this period of time that Dr. Rumbaugh did this work, graduation rates increased in this school district by 18.8% over a 5-year span, including improved academic performance across all subgroups by ethnicity and program participation. Another notable contribution that I want to highlight is in Highline School District. It included include her leadership supporting the implementation and expansion of dual language Spanish programs across the district, which we are a district that has about a 37% Spanish population. So I wanted to note and highlight this work that she has done in her career. And then before she came to us with Stanwood Camino School District as the superintendent, Dr. Rumbaugh made notable contributions to improving student performance. One contribution was that through her leadership, they had better outcomes on SBA scores and site-based assessments across all schools and subjects. And she also notably led a successful $77 million levy campaign. So some of the achievements we have had the pleasure of seeing her lead Marysville through was in this very brief time that we've had with her is significant contributions in guiding us through the transition from K-5 to K-6 and the school closure and consolidation process, reducing the budget expenditures by $5 million to ensure that Marysville is fiscally sustainable for 2024, 24 or 25, 26 and beyond. Another contribution is working in partnership with tribes and our ambassador, Jessica Bustad, to ensure that Marysville School District has an MOU with TLIP for 2 more years. The MOU provides invaluable contributions to ensuring that our Native American students have the supports that they need in place. So that is something that I really appreciate. Also working to develop productive relationships with our state oversight groups and helping to ensure that this district's these oversight groups are confident in our ability here in Marysville to recover financially, but also that we're practicing good school governance. And one other thing that I want to mention is that I really appreciate her expertise in her leadership and her knowledge, and that she is faculty at Seattle Pacific University in Western Washington. And here at these schools, Dr. Rumbaugh is a teacher, and she teaches the courses of in an administrative certificate program, also a certificate superintendent certificate program, and she's teaching in a program for doctorate of education and dual language administrative certificate program for Spanish. So I really wanted to take this time to just highlight these achievements and her contributions in leadership where I feel that we did not take that opportunity previously as we begin talking about moving forward.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to keep my comments really short. Over the last 6+ months, we've gotten to know Dr. Rumbaugh. It's kind of been like the world's longest job interview, and you could spend $40,000 or $50,000 to go out and do a national search for somebody to try to come and bowl you over for a couple of days. But if it's apparent that Dr. Rumbaugh is not only qualified for the job, but is somebody who can excel at the job. And if you don't think that she can do the job, you just haven't been paying attention. That's it. I mean, I know it's important to get community feedback. I know it's important to get buy-in from all the stakeholders, but I am convinced that we're not going to find anybody that's better for Marysville at this time.
As I think I said earlier, I haven't always agreed with Dr. Rumbaugh. But I find her, viewpoint, the way she expresses her viewpoints to be very compelling. And, I, I very much appreciate her responsiveness to the board. I think she's very carefully looked at how we want to operate and made sure that she could facilitate that as much as possible. I would very much appreciate getting some community input. And I think if community members have anything to say on the matter, then they should present themselves at the next couple of board meetings so that we have an opportunity to hear that. Or feel free to email any of us with your input with respect to Dr. Rumbaugh. We've got a critical decision to make, and we certainly have our own impressions, and we certainly have written materials to look at. But I think it's going to be important to hear if there are comments from the community as well. And to be frank, I forgot. I know I read the contract, but I can't remember whether December 1st date is a notification date or a date by which we must present her with a contract. I mean, I can go review the document.
I think we probably want to go back and review it, but I
Yeah.
feel like I remember the December 1st date is I think we needed to notify.
Okay.
Probably not have it completely buttoned up, but a notification.
Okay, well, that was one thing I was clear, because I just want to make sure we have our deadlines right so that we don't find ourselves wondering why we can't meet the date, if that's what we choose to do.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Thank you, Eliza. I do think we missed an opportunity to introduce Dr. Rumbaugh to the community. She has an extensive resume. And I think the icing on the cake, folks were talking about somebody who's local. She's definitely been local to the community and I think has an MP graduate in her family as well somewhere. So appreciate that as well, in addition to the strong skill set heard with respect to board members and their various opinions. Director Thomas, I think you noted, and part of the reason we wanted to begin the conversation tonight, opportunity for folks to come to the next couple of board meetings if they want to do that. I think a really great place to focus on skill set, qualities, and priorities for the district is input on that job description. So again, thank you all for the good discussion. And unless there's anything else on that topic,
It might be good to read that particular
do you want to
section
read that
in.
out loud? Okay.
It just says here, term as interim and extension of contract prior to December 31st, 2025. The Board of Directors will meet and make a determination as to whether they intend to run a search process for selecting a permanent superintendent or whether they desire to name the interim superintendent as permanent and negotiate a 3-year contract at that time.
Well, thank you for that. I was really working towards December 1st, not
I
31st.
I think there's no reason we shouldn't do that.
Gives us a little wiggle room in case, we need a smidge of time, but I would love us to work towards that December 1st date if we can. Okay. Do you have anything else, Director Davis?
Yes, I like the December 1st deadline too, because because we have multiple board members that are in an election. Maybe I shouldn't be saying that right now, but
Well, I would just say that in December, I think we have one meeting in December, and then the holidays are upon us. People are out for a couple of weeks. And so I think
there's only
pushing things towards the first part of December probably makes the most sense, having things buttoned up. But okay. We're going to close that topic out. Item K is executive session or other, and we do not have any. Item L is board director reports on business conducted. Okay. I always start to my right. Do you want to start, Eliza?
Sure. Hafslachel, good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here. I guess I had, I went to the Berry Bowl. That was exciting. And MP pulled it out. But I just want to keep it really brief and short and just say, um, I would like to, I look forward to your report, Dr. Rumbaugh, about some of the policy discussions that we had. I really appreciate the way that you take what we say here and help us through making process and ensuring that we have the answers. So I look forward to that, and I'm looking forward to some upcoming school visits that we have. I did get the opportunity to go to Liberty, um, which I'm still getting used to calling that. Sometimes I still want to call it MMS, but go to Liberty and spend some time there during the lunch hour and check out recess. And there's a lot happening there. I appreciated having the opportunity to just see how that is, how they're doing settling in there, because I know it's such a big transition, and I look forward to going to other schools to see. I would like to get into some of the 6th grade classrooms if possible. And I'll just conclude with that.
Yeah, I would like to say I'm behind Director Davis, but I very much want to go back to the schools in my district that I was able to visit last year. Now that they've had a chance to settle in, particularly the ones where there's significant changes, the middle schools and the elementary schools, and see how the students are adapting and how the staff is adapting, and if there are any concerns or issues. I think it's important to see that. I'm very excited about the opportunities that the restructuring offers to the district, and I'd like to make sure that we retain the confidence of the staff in implementing that restructuring. And so that's, I think, is a key element of what we need to look at in the first few months of the school year. I'm pleased with the first numbers we're looking at coming in on the enrollment, and I will be anxious later in the month to look at where the financial numbers are coming in. So I'm hopeful we can continue to, and the closeout of last year. I know everybody thinks we're going to wind up in a pretty good position, but it would be nice to have that confirmed and have that presented and show that we really are on our way to making this district financially responsible. And I very much appreciate the work that the entire district staff is doing to make that possible, and the support that's coming from the other members of the board of directors. I think that we've got a lot of work to do, but I'm hopeful that we'll soon be getting information. We're off to a very good start.
Great. Yeah, yeah. Agree with Directors Davis and Thomas. I would like to get into more schools. I'll go any place I'm invited at any time. So have me come out. I just some things from that I've been involved in. Before the Berry Bowl, was able to be involved in the Juan Mendoza Memorial Mile. I mean, people might not remember Juan Mendoza. He was a student here in Marysville. Was a good student, a great athlete, and an even better person. Juan was one of those kids that everybody liked. Didn't matter if you were a teacher or somebody working in the lunchroom or another kid. Everybody was his friend, and was tragically, killed in an auto crash coming to practice, right before practice. Great kid. It just shows how one poor choice in your life can change drastically. So it was cool. Before the Berry Bowl, we had the mile. Most of the MG and MP teams were out there that without, obviously not the football teams, but volleyball, swim and dive, cross country were all out there. Kind of appreciate Jackie Ligor Hodgins for putting that all together, and Juan's brother Eddie there to kind of honor his memory. Something I'm going to become involved with, see if we can't make this a little bit bigger deal to honor Juan's memory. He's the type of kid that we have to keep in our memories. Berry Bowl was really fun, probably one of the better high school games I've ever seen. So congratulations to Coach Kenny Alexander and the Tommies. I'd like to think that part of Kenny's success was having such a great sixth grade teacher, but I know that's probably not true. Probably far from it, but it really a gutsy win for them. And also to Getchell, you know, they played their hearts out. Those guys did not quit. They just ran out of time. And so congratulations to them too. Was able to go and sit in on the Cascade Elementary PTA meeting to find out some of the cool things going on there. They've got I'll shout out there, Saturday, October 18th, they're having a Cascade cleanup from 12 to 3. So if anybody has a free schedule then, the ladies were all excited about running power washers and things like that. So that'll be fun. Heritage Night on November 19th. So I plan on going to that. So it was really cool to see the things that they have going on at Cascade. And I'm trying to get out to the other schools for meetings like that as well. And then a couple quick ones. Thanks to Sue Shea and all her helpers, they had a flu and vaccine clinic here all set up for our employees. A lot of we appreciate every year having that. In the past, it's been drive-through. This time it was set up inside here, but it was quite an endeavor. So it was nice to come and get poked. My arm is finally not sore, so that's a good thing, I guess. And then just a thank you too to the state or Washington State, the League of Women Voters, and the Everett Herald. We've been, I know Director Thomas and I have been involved in interviews and those sort of things. So appreciate them for their contributions to the election. You know, making sure we have a informed public and all the work they're putting into the process here. So appreciate their efforts.
Thank you. Well, thanks for sticking with us tonight. This has been one of our longer meetings. Appreciate the folks who are here in the room and the folks that are with us online. I don't know that I have a whole lot to add this evening. I think you guys kind of covered just about everything. The Berry Bowl was super fun. And as you know, my kids graduated from Getchell. I think that was the closest game we've had with MP. So it was definitely a good time. Looking forward to getting out to Heritage later this week. And again, appreciate the work both out in our classrooms, the work that district staff is doing. They keep us underway, and appreciate the engagement of the board as we tackle. We had a lot to cover on our agenda this evening, so appreciate your support there as well. And at 7:49, we are going to adjourn the meeting. Thank you all. Good night.